Take that, Beardy.
That was just luck. Everyone knows you have no skills in cards.
Me? No skill?
Do you see anyone else sitting here?
Tread lightly, Beardy.
What the hell do you want?
Well, sirs, I just want to remind you that today is the Sabbath.
And?
Well, it is the Lord's Day, and I do not think that gambling is the best idea.
We do as we please. If we desire to play cards, then we'll play cards until doomsday if we choose to. Now leave us.
Who's this?
Hello, gentlemen. I was wondering if I could join in y'all's game of cards this evening.
Knock yourself out.
Well, you have to place a bet, and it's not small enough.
I think this will suffice. So, my in, gentlemen. You two gentlemen mind if I deal this hand?
Knock yourself out. If I have to tell you one more time, I promise you will not like the outcome. Hey man, where did our guest go?
I think you must have scared him off.
Guess we're back in.
Yes.
I'm not lying.
Everything that you've just witnessed was inspired by true events. The haunting images that you've just seen did happen, but they did not happen behind walls made of brick. No, they happened behind walls that were made of stone. They happened in one of the most haunted castles in all of the British Isles. And there are many ghosts that are trapped in this castle, ghosts from all throughout time. But this one is the most prominent. This one is the most infamous ghost, and this one is the most that everyone has seen. This is a tale of cruelty, addiction, gambling, and a deal made with the master of all evil himself. This is the tale of the Earl Beardie haunting at Glamis Castle. For this tale, we're going to be traveling back to 1445 in Angus, Scotland, to be exact. This was the year that Earl Beardie was given the name Earl of Crawford. Now, of course, his real name was not Earl Beardie. It was just a nickname given to him for his infamous red, long beard. He also went by the name of Tiger Earl. His real name, however, was Alexander Lindsay. Now, Alexander Lindsay was a man of many bad habits and probably had some demons lurking inside of his skull. Crawford was one of the largest and most influential baronies or estates in all of southern Scotland. The Lindsay family inherited half of the estate in 1215, known as Crawford Parish. In the year 1398, Robert II granted the title of the Earl of Crawford to David Lindsay, the first Earl of Crawford, who was also Alexander's great-grandfather. Alexander was only born in 1423. His parents being David Lindsay, being a different David from before, and Marjorie Ogilvy. Now, when his father died in 1445, naturally, Alexander came to power as the Earl of Crawford. Now, he was only 22 when he came to power. Now, the years before he was Earl, there's not very much known, but in the short 8 years that he was Earl, he definitely made up for that lost time. There's an account for his cruelty, being that on an occasion he had peers over at Finhaven Castle where he lived, and he instructed one of his servants to strip naked in front of all of his friends in the middle of the yard and dance around like a fool. Now, of course, Alexander and his peers, they laughed at this and got enjoyment out of it. Now, what happened next, it gets a little gruesome. Alexander then instructed the man to run for his life because Alexander and his friends were about to hunt the man. And oh, did they. They hunted the man down in the woods and they proceeded to stab him with sharp spears multiple times. And just when he was about to die from all the pain, Alexander sicked his hunting dogs on the man and they finished him off. Now, there was other accounts of him being cruel, but he was known far and wide for his cruelty and his very, very short temper. Crawford Castle, or Finhaven Castle, was the home of Alexander Lindsay and his family. The castle is now in ruins today, but in its prime it was an estate that held much control in southern Scotland. Now, one other thing that Alexander was known for while he was Earl was his part in the Douglas Rebellion. Now, the Douglas Rebellion started in the year 1452, and it was between the Douglas clan and the King of the Scots at the time, which was James II. Now, it started in 1452, and it started because James II murdered the 8th Earl of Douglas in Stirling Castle. So naturally, the Douglas clan would become angered, and they revolted against the king for his cold-blooded murder. And they recruited Alexander, and he obliged and joined with the Douglas clan and fought against James II. Now, in the same year, Alexander Lindsay lost at the Battle of Brechin against another Alexander, Alexander Gordon, the first Earl of Huntly. Now, after this loss, Alexander Lindsay submitted to James II, and that ended his war campaign in the Douglas Rebellion. To me, in the research that I found about this man, he was a man that liked to stir up a lot of trouble, and he was a big troublemaker, but he didn't like to stick around for what happened next. He liked to create the chaos, but didn't like to see how it ended. Now, one other thing that I found odd was that he died the year after, in 1453. Now, through my research, I was unable to find a cause of death. Now, I'm not saying that his death was caused by anything paranormal. But at the same time, I'm not saying that it wasn't paranormal either. Now, before I get into the actual Earl Beardie haunting story, I want to talk about Glamis Castle itself and its cursed origins and try to explain and figure out why the castle is so haunted with so many spirits. As I mentioned before, Glamis Castle is one of the most haunted castles in all of the British Isles, and it's located in Angus, Scotland. Now, originally it was used by the Scots as a hunting lodge, and later on in 1372, the King of the Scots at the time, Robert II, gifted Glamis Castle to the Bowes-Lyon family, where they started doing renovations on it into making it the castle that we all know today. Now, in the year 1445, Patrick Lyon became the head of Glamis Castle and became the first Lord of Glamis. And he was the one that you witnessed earlier playing cards with Earl Beardie. Patrick Lyon, who is the middle figure in this photo, was born in 1402 and died on March 21st, 1459. He married the daughter of Sir Walter Ogilvie of Lintrathan, who was also the treasurer of Scotland. He had 4 children with her: Alexander, John, William, and Elizabeth. Now, Patrick Lyon's father was the infamous Sir John Lyon, and Sir John was the one that was believed to have brought the curse to Glamis Castle, which is believed to be the reason why it's so haunted with so many spirits. Now, the story goes is that Sir Lyon traveled to an ancient village where he removed an ancestral chalice that was not to be touched or removed, and he brought it back to Glamis Castle with him. Now, when he brought this chalice back, he brought the curse with him, and that is believed how the castle got its curse and why there are so many spirits there. Another one of the more prominent ghosts inside of the castle walls is the spirit of Lady Douglas, who was burned at the stake in 1537 for plotting to poison the king. She is also known as the Grey Lady. Another ghost that inhabits the castle is an unknown woman who has no tongue, which is what she's called, the woman with no tongue. She's also described as walking along the inside of the windows, and she also runs through the park pointing at her mutilated face, acting as if someone should help her. There was also talk about a secret room being made and sealed off with the horribly deformed child of the 11th Earl of the castle. They lied to the entire kingdom and said that their son had died, but he was very much alive and inside of the secret room made specifically to hold the deformed child and hide him from the public. And it is said that he still haunts the castle to this day. Now I'm going to talk about the actual Earl Beardie haunting itself. Now, there's a couple variations of this story, but this is the one that's told the most. How it starts off is Earl Beardie and Patrick Lyon are playing cards with one another in Glamis Castle on a Sunday. One of the servants in the castle comes and lets them know that it's the Sabbath and that he doesn't believe that they should be playing cards or gambling on the Lord's day. Now, Beardy, who's already intoxicated, is angered by this, and he yells at the servant and tells him to leave them and that they will play till doomsday if that is what they choose. Now, the servant obeys his orders and he leaves, and then shortly after, it's reported a mysterious hooded man comes to the castle and asks for entry. He comes in and asks to join Patrick Lyon and Earl Beardie's game of cards. Now, when the stranger comes to the table, he brings out a bag of rubies and puts them on the table, and that's his opening bid. Now, of course, after this, the men let him play. They're playing, and then the servant hears yelling coming from the room. The servant comes to the room, and when he looks inside the doorway, what he sees next strikes horror into his soul so much that he is thrown back by what he has seen. He sees Patrick Lyon, Earl Beardie, and the hooded man, who in fact is the Prince of Darkness himself, Satan, Lucifer, the devil, at the head of the table, and they are all playing in a room filled with fire. Now, the men at the table do not notice that there's a fire, but the servant sees them playing in fire, and this confuses the man. Now what happens next is Beardy is yet again angered and comes out of the room and yells at the servant to stop spying on him, and the servant leaves. And when Beardy goes back, the stranger's gone. Now nobody knows where he went after that. That's just one variation. Another variation is that Beardy is by himself on a drinking binge, demanding that somebody play cards with him, and nobody will because it's the Sabbath. And he proclaims that he will play with the devil himself and play until doomsday, if that's what he will do. And then the hooded man comes once again, and they play cards. Now what happens next is some people say that his soul was claimed that night and Beardy was never seen again. But I do not think that that claim holds any water, and I'll tell you why. Because there's a record of Alexander Lindsay dying in 1453. And he's buried at Finhaven Castle, where he was Earl. So if he disappeared that night, why do they have death records and a burial platform? There's another claim that his soul was claimed, but he didn't die till 5 years later. Now this one holds a little bit more water with me, because if his soul was claimed that night as a punishment for playing cards on the Sabbath, and he died 5 years later, that would make a lot more sense. Now, to recap everything that we've talked about this evening, was Alexander Lindsay or Earl Beardie and or Patrick Lyon visited by the devil himself that night? Did he play cards with them, and did he claim Lindsay's soul and 5 years later take him to hell? Maybe. Because this is not the first account that the devil has claimed a wicked man. And Lindsay did prove, as we know before, that he was a wicked and cruel and evil man, as many people have described him. Now, some could look at this as Lindsay's sins caught up with him, and the hooded man, who was reported to be the devil, came to collect Lindsay and take him to a place of everlasting punishment for his cruel and evil deeds while he was alive. Or it could just be simply a misunderstanding. That a hooded man did come to the castle and he did play cards, and then Lindsay died 5 years later, coincidentally. And people are trying to make sense of this and trying to set things right for the deeds of a cruel man. We may never know who that hooded man was, and we may never know if he was the devil and if he did come to take Lindsay's soul. But the accounts cannot be ignored that people still hear the arguing of Patrick Lyon and Earl Beardie over their game of cards in the castle till this day. And people who stay in the Blue Room at Glamis Castle report seeing Beardy's ghost hovering or watching over them while they sleep. And all of these accounts cannot be ignored. People are seeing this man, and maybe that is his hell. He's being trapped in the castle where he sold his soul and doomed to play cards until doomsday, just like he said that he would. Thanks for watching the video again. If you liked everything that you saw, please do not forget to hit the red subscribe button below. Also comment and share this. As always, follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook, the links will be below. And again, still, if anybody has any stories that are paranormal, strange, or unexplained, please contact me and let me know about your stories. And thanks again, and wait for the next video.